Hi guys, welcome to Only English Literature. In this video, we are going to talk about how the novel Kanthapura significantly becomes a post-colonial novel. Before we start the video, I want to mention the topics that we are going to cover today. First is decolonization of the mind. Second is cultural hybridity, nationalism and anti-colonialism, and lastly the subaltern voices. So let's start. Thiongo argues that language is a crucial aspect of colonialism. He contends that the imposition of European languages such as English, French, and Portuguese on African colonies was a deliberate attempt to erase African languages and cultures. As same like Indian tradition that has been seen in India, that British tried to erase the identity of India's language, tradition, and culture. He critiques the ways in which colonialism imposed European cultural values, norms, and practices on African societies. He argues that this led to the suppression of African culture, identities, and the promotion of European cultural superiority. Under this, another subtopic is there, that is rejection of Western values. Achakka, the narrator, describes the changes brought about by the British colonial rule. The collector's court had come into our village, and with it the police and the schools and the hospitals and the hotels. We do not want our schools, we do not want our courts. We do not want your police. We want to be left alone to live our own life, to follow our own customs. Achoka emphasizes the importance of preserving traditional Indian customs and ways of life. The another subtopic under this topic covering is assertion of Indian identity. Murthy, a young Gandhian, embodies the decolonization of the mind. He rejects Western clothes and adopts traditional Indian attire like dhoti kurta. He would appreciate wearing khadi clothes by spinning wheels like Gandhi used to do. He started believing Gandhi as his idol, as his god. He will meditate for hours and survive on salt water for his village. Even he would read and give teachings on the holy Indian scriptures such as Bhagavad Gita, Upanishad, Ved, and many more. Murthy had given up his European dress and wore a khaddar shirt and a dhoti. He had a red Gandhi cap on his head and a rosary of tulsi beads around his neck. Under cultural hybridity, there is a subtopic, that is blending of myth and history. Achakka's narrative seamlessly weaves together mythological stories and historical events. The goddess Kenchamma is the symbol of the village's cultural heritage, and her presence is woven into the historical narrative of British colonialism. Our village is the sacred place of Kenchamma, the goddess of our hills. She is the daughter of the hills, and the hills are her home. The British came to our hills and they cut down the trees, and they made roads, and they built houses, but Kenchamma remained, watching over our village. Another subtopic under this topic is coexistence of traditional and modern practices. The novel portrays the coexistence of traditional Indian practices alongside modern influences. The character of Murthy, a young Gandhian, uses English to communicate with the villagers and to spread Gandhian ideology. This illustrates the blending of English, the language of the colonizer, with Indian languages and cultures. The presence of Christian missionaries in the village who introduced Christian values and practices alongside of the villagers of Kanthapura practiced traditional Hindu rituals and customs, but also adopt modern practices. Quote, our village has a school and the children learn English and mathematics and science. But we still follow our old customs and we still worship our gods. We have a temple for Kenchamma and we have a priest who performs the puja. Gandhian ideology. Murthy's character represents the Gandhian ideology of non-violent resistance against colonialism. In his commitment to Gandhian ideology, he advocates for non-violent resistance, boycotts, and the use of Swadeshi goods to challenge British colonial rule. As Murthy said, we must not pay taxes to the British. We must boycott their goods and we must use our own Swadeshi goods. He said, we must unite and we must fight for our freedom. Village resistance. The villagers refused to pay taxes and they refused to supply labor for the British. They boycotted British goods and they used their own Swadeshi goods. They held meetings and they passed resolutions and they sent petitions to the British. The last topic of this video, that is subaltern voices, the marginalized voices used by Raja Rao in this novel. First is women's voices. Women's experiences, a Chakka story, highlights the experiences of women in the village. Her narrative asserts women's agency and autonomy, highlighting their ability to make decisions and take action and how women in the village support and solidarity with each other, forming networks of resistance. Ratna's protest. Ratna, a young woman, protests against the British authorities' attempt to arrest her husband, demonstrating her courage and resistance. Dalit's voices. Bhatta's story, Dalit character, shares his story of oppression and marginalization, highlighting the injustices faced by Dalits in the village. The Padiya colony. The novel describes the Padiya colony, a segregated area where Dalits are forced to live, illustrating the social and economic exclusion faced by Dalit. The forest tribes. The novel mentions the forest tribes who live on the outskirts of the village and are often exploited and marginalized by the British authorities. And the tribal leaders. A tribal leader protests against the British authorities' attempt to forcibly relocate his tribe, demonstrating his resistance against colonial oppression. Lastly, the peasants' voices. The peasants' struggle, which the novel highlights the struggles of the peasants who face poverty, exploitation, and oppression under British colonial rule. The village resistance, the villagers led by Murthy resist the British authorities' attempt to impose taxes, forced labor, and other forms of exploitation. Hope you have liked this video. See you next time.